false scarcity and a bit of induced panic, and people will be on the uptake. I think we have Martin with us.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Just joined in there. I didn't want to interrupt your conversation.
No, it's all right. That's our style. Just gay crash. Fuck it. Come on in.
Yeah, I was actually watching Narcos there, and I realised the time. I was like, shit, I better not be late.
No, you're dead. You're bang on time. It's just rare for an Irishman, so maybe that's a Cork thing. And a stoner. Well, I'm assuming you're a stoner, like, so.
Yeah, stoner. I'm proud of it. But...
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, that does it. Yeah, it always has a negative connotation. But yeah, so welcome along, Martin. I'm Morgan.
I'm Howard.
Nice to meet you, Morgan. Hi, Howard.
So last week we've been talking about legalization and cannabis, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it, for a long time. For me, probably started 20 years, maybe 20 years ago. Yeah. And then I stepped out of the whole thing for maybe 10 years. But part of it was, I was aware of Mark Emery. And so he came back to my mind again. So we had a 2-part interview with Mark Emery. And I was convinced that there's essentially nothing going on in Ireland around kind of activism around legalization. And then it dawned on me, well, that's only because I'm doing fuck all. And I'm not aware of it. And then as if by magic, you pop up, Martin. And so then we're just having a look around, and you were in the newspaper, obviously, around planting the
newspapers.
So planting the plants outside the Garda stations. So we thought it would be interesting if we have you on. So maybe let us know what is going on at the minute, and then we can have a chat around the kind of the cannabis culture. Because I'm fascinated by that as well. So for me, there's a couple of angles to it. There's obviously the freedom issue, the freedom to be an adult, and be in control of your own body and your own mind. I'm a stoner. I stopped smoking weed, but mentally, spiritually, I think I was proud to be a stoner as well. I used to be proud of it. I wouldn't fall into the kind of negative connotation of the lazy fucking dopey stoner. Which is the general stereotype. But what I found is when I was using, well, I don't even want to say using because it makes me sound like I'm a fucking heroin addict or something. When I was smoking weed and being involved in the culture, I was heavily involved in the culture, which I find kind of fascinating because there's no other drug like it, where it seems to kind of captivate you and you advocate on behalf of the plant. I got involved. I knew everything about it from the trichomes to horticulture, every fucking thing you could imagine about it. So that kind of fascinates me, and the spiritual side of it, if there is such a thing. So that's really why we have you on. So I don't know, maybe you can tell us how you get into activism.
I suppose for me, it was just all because of my own lived experience that got me into the whole field of activism. Got stopped by the cops one evening with my girlfriend, and happened to have a little bit of hash in the glove box. And the cops searched the car. It was 2 female cops that evening, actually, 2 Gardaí, 2 female band Gardaí. And they were nice about what they were doing and stuff. They weren't being rude or anything, but at the same time, they weren't my friends. They ripped the car apart. They literally emptied out the entire glove box. I handed them the hash. They were like, "Do you have anything that's in the car that shouldn't be?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And they were like, "We're going to search your car anyway, so it's in your interest now to tell us if you do." So on that second offering, I was like, "Look, I have a little bit of hash there in the glove box. That's all." She goes, "That's fine. Get out of the car." And they still searched the car. They ripped it apart. So. As nice as they were up to this point, like that was nasty enough afterwards, because I had to put all of my stuff back in. I went through all my CDs and everything, left my CDs all out, out of the case and everything. I was freaking out because I was like, I want to scratch my CDs. But yeah, no, and after that, then I suppose I went into court, and the case actually got struck out. The judge was rather sound when I went in there. The Nadja hash that I got caught with, it was so small that the judge just kind of turned around to the cops and was lambasting the cops, really, in fairness, kind of saying, what are you doing? Why are you wasting my time bringing this guy to court for such a small amount? You should have dealt with this at the side of the road. And this person shouldn't be in front of me, and he struck it out, and I went on the way home, so that was fine. But after that, then I became a bit of a target, I suppose, for the Gardaí. They just started stopping and searching me more well, you could say randomly, but anytime they've bloody seen me, I would so imagine. Also, I hung around with my cousin, and my cousin's dad sold hash at the time too. So the second time I got stopped and searched, it was with my cousin. So I think then once they made that association, that's their cousins. He's on the radar now. So I got stopped and searched, I suppose, close to, I would imagine, nearly 100 times by the time I was 21. The first time getting stopped and searched was 17. And that very first time I got stopped and searched, when I went home that evening, I went and I looked up the law that the guards were after quoting to me. It was Section 3 Misuse of Drugs Act 1977. So I went, Googled that, looking her up, and got the results. Found out the maximum sentence that I could have gotten was a €1,500 fine and a year in jail. And I was just kind of like, this is crazy, over a little bit of hash that they could take away my freedom for an entire year. It was just like, the punishment didn't fit the crime. That's just felt very unjust to me at the time. So I just constantly went to asking more questions. What was the origins of this? How did this law begin in Ireland? And then you kind of follow the trail back. And it's just built off a lot of lies by a bunch of racist, misogynist men who got together at the end of alcohol prohibition. And they were like, well, look, there's these Mexicans and black people that they use this stuff, and we're going to start calling it marijuana. And that's how we're going to trick the public and demonize it. And for me, that's kind of how I see the origins of cannabis prohibition, getting to Ireland from these nut jobs through the UN in the US. They just declared a war on drugs right across the world. And you have to look at it like a war on drugs. Drugs are going nowhere, so it's a perpetual war. It's never ending. Like the war machine, like it's full steam ahead for them. That they're delighted. Lots of people making money, but our communities have been destroyed because of it. The organized crime gangs that are empowered because of this prohibition. So once I just started getting a window of all this, of what's going on, and looking behind the curtain as to how our society actually operates, and prohibition is just not fit for our society. Is just kind of how I seen it, and from my own lived experience. So this is over a couple of years. I start developing my thoughts, my opinions on this. I slowly went from cannabis legalization to wider drug decriminalization to now being actually, we not only decriminalize all drugs, but we need to regulate all drugs in our society, because it's just going to continue in this cyclical nature where we continuously destroy the lives of the most vulnerable in our communities. Because that's what's happening. I was a vulnerable young person that night, and that's how I got targeted. A vulnerable young person hanging around with my cousin, whose dad was a dealer, and the cops seen a fit to target us then as kids, to get at his dad, who might have been selling a bit of hash to his friends. It's just a sick system once you kind of experience it and witness all that goes on within it. I see kind of some of my friends then with my cousin up over in that area, and they just didn't have the same outlook in life as maybe myself. I was lucky enough. My dad got me a job at 15, sweeping the warehouse, and kind of learned the value of money and things like that then. But some of my friends weren't afforded the same opportunity. And they just kind of, once they have that first interaction with the cops, well, I'm a criminal now. I'm a gangster. So a lot of them grew up watching Scarface and all of these kind of movies. And that kind of lifestyle appeals to him in a certain sense. Like, nobody wants to be dealing with the cops, but you know what I mean? The cash, the flashy watches and stuff. Like, if you're a good dealer, if you're a good gangster, you might be able to get some of this stuff. So
yeah, well, some of the lads I grew up with that's what they would have aspired to. I know a couple of guys who that was their ambition, was to grow up to be a gangster, because of how it's portrayed in movies. What I want to say there, you mentioned about the cops, right? Yeah. I've always wanted to interview a guard and to have them talk honestly about what they're doing. It hasn't happened. I don't think it ever will happen, to be honest.
I got very close the other day up in Phoenix Park. Actually, we had a couple of guards nearer to us with the protest that was going on above there. But they actually supported us in our actions above their calling for legalization of cannabis. That was last Saturday. I don't know if you're aware of that protest that happened up in Phoenix Park.
Yeah, I was aware of that. So, but what I was going back to, you see, my worry is if we take, say, tomorrow we legalized marijuana and it was regulated, and whatever. What doesn't change is the nature of the cops, and that's a different conversation altogether outside of marijuana. So I would probably prefer to have a prohibition on the guards than a prohibition on any drug. But I think the mindset is there within the guards that they're going to implement any legislation, irrespective of what it is. And I find that more worrying. And then the relationship between the guards and communities. So I from Dublin, so I would have grown up in a strong working class area where the relationship with the guards is essentially one of distrust. It's essentially like two gangs. You know, you have the guards who are a gang, they come in, they strong arm everybody. And again, lots of people are arrested for small amounts of drugs, petty crime. And there's no real relationship. They had community guards, but there's no actual relationship with the guards, and I don't think there fucking can be. So I don't know. In your experience, did you say you've been arrested over 100 times, or just stopped and searched over 100 times?
Stopped and searched about close to 100 times.
And bar your experience in the Phoenix Park, were you ever able to, talk to them on a human level to get by the kind of uniform and the job? Because I fucking haven't. I tried numerous times to listen here. Well, or maybe it worked for me once. I managed to go, listen, we're just two fucking people here. Can we drop the bullshit of, okay, well, you're, a quote unquote, a guard. And, because to me, it seems madness. I'd like to think that everybody can connect on a human level and go, listen, let's have a talk about this. I'm smoking, a bit of weed. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really fucking hurt anybody. So really, can you not just use your, inherent judgment and wisdom to go, you know what? Fair enough. Go on home. That's really how it should be now. But I don't know. Have you been able to have those conversations?
I've always tried, but I've never actually been successful in convincing a cop to let me go, like, out of the goodness of his heart. Even leaving with my cannabis. Like, no, it was always, anytime I've ever been caught, they would always want to know, where do you get this from? Flip on your dealer, tell us where you got it from. And they're nasty that way, really, because that puts you as a young person, again, a vulnerable person in the community, in an incredibly dangerous position. Because imagine if you do flip on somebody and they find out, and you're now a pariah in the community. You're going to jump, potentially maybe get kneecapped or something, or worse.
End up in a fucking ditch, like, absolutely. Yeah, so I don't think they care. Obviously, there's probably 10 or 15 different issues within that. So am I right in thinking you're involved in kind of youth work? So am I correct in that?
No, I wouldn't really be involved in youth work or anything like that myself. I've an interest in it, but because of my background with the criminal convictions, I've a €400 fine due to be paid there now in September, and I'm not going to be paying it either, because I'm not going to make this easy for them. I'm not going to be a part of my own oppression. I'm going to challenge them every step of the way. It's a €400 fine for a €10 worth of cannabis. Civil disobedience, I'm not participating in it. I'll show up to their court cases, but at the same time, I'm going to be challenging them every step of the way. If they want to lock me up for my views and my beliefs, then I'll be more than happy to go to prison for my views and beliefs. But they'll have a lot more trouble on their hands then, because they'll be responsible for my care. And who knows, I might go into a hunger strike or something like that when I'm up there, because there needs to be awareness brought to this. Like, they're taking away, threatening, they're basically, our state is effectively terrorizing people like myself. If they're threatening me with these court, with the authorities, in order to conform to their beliefs. Cannabis, as you talked about here at the start of the show, all the spiritual aspects to it, and how it helps people. For me, it definitely helped me ground myself, become much more aware of the present. I was never engaged with my thoughts before as a young person. So for me, I always would say that I was maybe self-medicating with cannabis as a young person. And it was always beneficial to me. It was never beneficial to have my pockets searched and to be brought up to a bloody guard station and get strip searched as a kid. Like it's just not a pleasant experience. Or to have your whole family removed from the car with your dogs up the side of the road on Easter Sunday for a drug search, because you got caught with a €10 joint 2 weeks before. They're terrorists. That's how I see them. That's how I experience them. And I'm just not going to be a part of that anymore. I'm not going to make it easy for them. Not going to be violent or anything like that. But peaceful civil disobedience. I believe that will be a good way to send a message against them. I was back out again. I have more cannabis plants planted around the city again. So I'm going to keep on being just a nuisance and a thorn in the side to them, because they're wasting hundreds of millions of euros of taxpayers' money every year to destroy the lives of the most vulnerable people in our communities. When the flip side of it, if we were to follow like some of the states in America and legalize and regulate cannabis, we could be generating multiple millions, hundreds of millions that we could be reinvesting into our communities, like the Cork's Life Centre here. That's they're fighting for funding now at the moment. And if you probably don't know what the Cork Life Centre is, but it's a place for kids who find themselves on the outside of the mainstream system. So kids who don't fit in well in school, they might have got kicked out for one reason or another, but they go down there and there's a community of peers that really look out for them. They can understand them because they've maybe walked the same path as them. So it's a very unique service, and it's a vital service to help these young people. Again, the most vulnerable in our community. You talk about your friends watching the gangster movies and aspiring to be like that. I'd imagine you probably say that they're not the most educated of people making those kind of decisions, so they're vulnerable.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's, for me anyway, from growing up in it, there's a couple of issues. A lot of them aren't politically correct, and I use my own example. So the first time I get introduced to cannabis is when I'm 13, just through hanging around with older young fellas. And it's a case of, here, try this, and I didn't know what the fuck it was at all. But you want to fit in, peer pressure. So you try it. So the first time I tried it, the first couple of drags, it was like nothing. Then another few drags, and then 5 minutes later, stuck to the ground. What the fuck is this like? And then from there on started a kind of a 20-year love affair with it, because it does change your consciousness. It does allow you to see the world in a different way. For me, it was mostly just the pleasure of it. It feels good, which is why drugs are so popular, because above all, it makes people feel good, and I would have advocated for it. But then for me, as I got older, there became a time when it had negative effects for me. So I would get paranoid, and I don't blame the drug. So there was a lot going on in my life at the time, but it was having negative effects, and it was no longer for me. So the way I frame it is that the drug essentially rejected me. But I think when I look at activism, a lot of times that's kind of skimmed over, and I would have done it as well, because at the time I was saying like, well, a lot of it's just bullshit. It doesn't have effect on mental health at all, but it does. But everything does. My ex-wife had a bigger mental effect on me than any drug. Or maybe we can classify women as drugs, and we should have them prohibited. But I think there needs to be a kind of an honest conversation around it, and for me, but it always falls back to personal responsibility. That okay, if you use these substances, there's consequences to it, just like with alcohol, tobacco, driving. There's inherent dangers with everything. And the question for me that comes up as well is, why use it in the first place? Is that what's the underlying reason for it? And if it does help, fine. But for some people, I don't think it helps. But the argument can't be made that prohibition is in any way good. I just can't see any logical argument for why it would remain prohibited. Where I do worry is if the people who have benefited from prohibition are then the ones dictating the legislation around it. That may end up where it essentially becomes the sole property of corporations if they patent it. And I know there was talk in the past about patenting the genetics of it as well. And talking to Mark Emery, he seems to have been frozen out of it altogether. I know a lot of the people in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who were at the forefront of prohibition now sit on the boards of pharmaceutical companies who are selling it. So it's all just shady and fucking disgusting. But I do think there needs to be an honest debate about it. Personally, I think it's probably going to be legalised, not because our government has had any change of heart or suddenly see the logic of it. I think those kind of decisions are just being made at a higher level, and they will fall in tow with the States and the rest of Europe. And if I get a little bit conspiratorial, I think it may be legalised because it will placate people. I know with some people get involved with activism, people who like yourself, and I think if it wasn't weed, it's going to be something else, because I think the underlying element for me anyway is that it's a freedom issue. The plant is really the route to freedom and liberty. But I have a feeling that for a lot of people it would just help placate them. Because that's what I found as well, that it's kind of, when I was smoking, and this is just personal, it made boredom acceptable for me. So I was happy to just be kind of bored and content and to go into my own mind. But again, that's just me. But I think those things need to be mentioned as well, so we have a full objective picture of what the issues are. And that would be my view, to have an honest conversation about it. So I don't really have a question in there, just a couple of observations. So maybe I will have a question. If it is legalized rather than decriminalized, do you still have a preference for legalization and regulation rather than just purely decriminalization? And if that's the case, is that because you want to take it completely out of what we would call them unregulated criminals' hands and put it into the regulated criminals who so happen to be run the country,
Well, you look at Portugal. A lot of people talk about Portugal at the moment as a great model, and don't get me wrong. There's certainly great things happened in Portugal because of decriminalization. But one thing that didn't change over there is the drugs. They're still sold by criminals, and the drug users are still at the risk of buying contaminated products. So that as a result of decriminalization, you're able to have services that pop up that assist with some of these risks to reduce them, because now drug users can carry a personal amount of drugs. So they can go to services such as Cosmic Care, and they'll test the drugs for the drug users. And then also going around in Portugal, because of decriminalization, you have mobile drug consumption rooms where people can smoke their drugs and inject their drugs in the back of vans, get clean needles, meet professionals, get any other kind of advice that may be needed, directed to other maybe services. If a person was, finding themselves homeless, ill health or whatever, they would look after them. This wasn't there before, and Portugal had big problems before decriminalization with HIV and hepatitis as well. These drug injecting kind of related diseases. And after decriminalization, they had a massive reduction in some of these drug injecting related diseases. So that there was tremendous benefits. But I met João Glau. João Glau is the basically he named himself the Dean of Decriminalization in a recent interview with a buddy of mine, Casas Drogas. He kind of said it that Portugal done an experiment for Europe, and this is in 2014 as well, I've had. And he said Portugal's experiment was a success, and he was hoping now that some other European state would take the next step, which would have been not only to decriminalize, but to regulate the supply of all the drugs to the drug users, because he acknowledged that was a problem still in Portugal. drug users acquiring their drugs from unregulated sources where there's God only knows how many bloody risks associated with that kind of activity.
Yeah.
So decriminalization alone is certainly not something I would be campaigning for. It's decriminalization and regulation of all drugs because why not? I can't see a reason to support prohibition. Even for people who use heroin, cocaine, they should all be provided a safe and regulated access to their drug. And if they've got a drug addiction problem, then look, the barriers now are much lower in terms of accessing and reaching these people. So you're now in a much better position to help people when they need help. Whereas, current situation, they're not known to the services. You have people out there using cocaine, using heroin and other drugs, and they're hiding because there's a lot of stigma. With cocaine users, a lot of them probably have pretty good jobs. So they don't want to expose themselves in that sense. That's one thing I always kind of say, outside of Dan Larson there in Canada, I don't know of too many people out there campaigning for the legalization and regulation of cocaine.
No,
it's always cannabis. It's like always cannabis. Like people can fly that flag loud and proud, no problem. Yeah. But there's very few other drug users out there that campaigin for their drug to be legalized.
That's what amazes me about obviously there's professional classes are going to be using I imagine coke over marijuana, but it's the culture. And that's what amazes me, because people will advocate for the plant and will, fall in, for lack of a better term, will fall in love with the plant. Will want to know everything about it, want to know the history of it, get involved in the growing of it, then apply it to everything from clothing to as fuels. And there's the hemp movement as well. So that fucking it mystifies me. So to get kind of spiritual, there's almost like a spirit to the plant itself. And I can't think of another drug like it. So I know there's alcohol and there's a huge culture around drinking, and there's an advertising industry behind it. But to me, it doesn't equate with marijuana. And I think that's because of the change in consciousness when you smoke it, or at least when I was smoking it, I was just going to introspective fucking mode for hours on end. So I don't know what your relationship with the plant is in that term. Is it just simply for you? Okay, well it mellows you out. Or is there more to it? Or have you thought about, why advocate on it? Or is it just purely, okay, well, look, this has a fucking negative effect in the community. It's ridiculous that, people are going to prison for this.
Yeah, it was just more, I suppose, as I said, cannabis was always beneficial to me when I consumed it. I never experienced any real problems with it. And even at times, I would even take breaks from using cannabis. There's no problem. I don't really have any addiction. I've stopped using tobacco with my cannabis about 7 or 8 years ago, and I noticed a completely different relationship than afterwards with cannabis because prior to when I was smoking tobacco with it, I used to smoke an awful lot more actually, and there was certainly an addiction there with the tobacco. But once I got that out of there, there's no real addictive kind of tendencies there. I rather enjoy cannabis like I enjoy my coffee. I try not to drink coffee daily, and I don't really mind smoking cannabis daily.
Yeah, I think for me it was the way I was smoking it as well. So where I grew up, I was amazed actually when I started meeting Americans and Canadians the way they would smoke weed. So they would like 2 or 3 puffs and pass. And the culture where I grew up, it's like, everybody had a joint, so you would smoke a full joint to yourself or half a joint and pass it, and probably, smoke way too much.
I used to always wonder with those American movies because they used to make such small little joints.
Where 3 skinners and 5 skinners fucking left, right, and center. How much can you smoke before you pass it on to the next person? So so yeah, maybe that's what we lack is just education about drug use, like a proper fucking education, not like, propaganda one way or the other, but just real conversations about, okay, this is a drug, these are the positive effects, these are the negative effects.
Exactly, because once you educate people on that, because that's the biggest thing missing out at the moment is education. People can't differentiate between use and abuse. And that's a big, again, as I say, once we have decriminalization and regulation, where we're going to be in a much better position to help educate people to identify when they have a drug problem, when they have an addiction problem, when it's getting in the way of things in life. And again, have a pathway there to help these people back on the right track in life and to reassess their relationship with whatever drug it is that they're engaged in using or abusing.
Okay, did you want to say something there, Howard?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay.
I was just going to point, not at all, there's three of us, it gets confusing. I was just going to point out that we kind of have that with alcohol, or at least, maybe beyond the last 200-300 years, we've had that with alcohol. I think a very reasonable relationship with it. It certainly affects many people's lives, but this goes back to a social issue, and we have designated areas to imbibe this drug. So yeah, it just strikes me when I hear this conversation that why it seems there is the prohibition on getting high at all whatsoever. If it alters your mind in any way, no, we can't have that. We're very Calvinist, very Christian in that way, except for this, because they couldn't get rid of this when, society went through the great cultural shift. So it's kind of a strange one to get people over, to enlighten them to the view that, well, we can do this with other things. We can teach people to be responsible. I mean, that's, people have to learn to be responsible. They're not born being responsible, in, the majority of ways.
No, definitely not. The way I found out how to be responsible with my drugs was through Erowid and through peers. Peer-to-peer education is how we kind of learned growing up. And online erowid.org was a great website or a great resource. People do share all their trip reports and stuff like that up there. You get to learn about dosages, body weights and stuff like this. So again, peer-to-peer is it's good, but it's not really where you want it to be at. But when the mainstream education is, don't do these drugs, they're going to be real bad for you. And then you go on to Erowid and you're like reading this trip report and this person's like, this is the greatest experience of my life. And you're reading it and you're like, that sounds like a pretty cool experience that person just had. Like, so the contrast there between the mainstream education and what you actually get from your peers. And again, like, who are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to the one at the top of the classroom who is lying to you. Like a lot of the kids today, they all have these devices in their pockets with every bit of information they need right at the fingertips. Like, so you can't fool kids today. And again, you just be honest about it. Look, this is drug X. This is the effects of drug X. And have a proper, unadulterated conversation, free from all of this propaganda that's around drugs currently.
Yeah. When I think back, I think the first maybe 5 or 10 years I was smoking, it was mostly sober, and I didn't have a fucking clue what it was. Never saw herbal marijuana. I hate even saying those words because it makes me sound like a fucking cop, You were in possession of 6 grams of herbal marijuana. But yeah, so it was sober, didn't have a clue what it was, still got me high. I didn't know that it's essentially fucking, turpentine and flour and glue and fucking horseshoes and everything else.
My poor brain.
Yeah, I know, like, so, but again, another thing with prohibition and not having it regulated, that it's essentially, it's bathtub gin, But again, over time, I got involved in educating people about that. Well, hang on, do you know what this actually is? And when I started telling people first, they were like, fuck off, like, there's no way, like, who would do that? Why would somebody want to do that? And you go, well, because, they want to make fucking money. So if you can, put 2 grams into a fucking 28-gram bar of actual hash, and then fill the rest of it and sell it for €100 a pop, people will happily make money all day fucking long on it. And I'm pretty sure it's probably still floating around there in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I don't think the argument can be made, or at least a logical, reasoned argument can be made that it's a good thing to have prohibition, unless where we have a zero tolerance approach to it. Because I looked at countries where, how can I say that, we say there's very little use or almost zero use of marijuana, and that would be Japan and South Korea, and it's essentially because they have a zero tolerance approach to it. But I don't want to live in that society. I think we're almost encroaching into that type of fucking society anyway, or some perverse version of it.
But Asia or China is actually the biggest producer of cannabis in the world.
Who's this?
They just produce for industrial hemp. That's what they produce.
All right. I wasn't aware. I was just aware it was Japan, and they have a very intolerant approach to any sort of drug use at all. But
they're becoming a bit more tolerant nowadays to it, especially in light of the kind of what we're learning about CBD and all of the other cannabinoids in there. They're allowing the sale of hemp, kind of, it's cannabis that's below a certain percent THC. Yeah. Thailand is getting on board as well. There's big industries kicking off there in Asia. As I say, like Asia, China, they're probably the biggest producer. They are the biggest producer of cannabis. It was just always the industrial hemp. Now along comes this even more valuable product that you can get off of the same plant, just different genetics needed. There's a rat race on at the moment now. America and Canada seem to be. I think Canada is probably the leaders, maybe, and Israel is actually a player in this market as well, where they're all kind of racing to just make big bucks off of the production of cannabis, and keeping prohibition in place as much to these guys' benefits.
Yeah, knowing Ireland and how conservative we are, do you think, like, do you have a vision of, okay, this is going to happen in a year, it's 5 years, it's 10 years, or essentially it will come down through diktat that, look, you have to do this as some fucking EU directive or something? Again, I'm not involved. I don't know if there's many politicians who are actively looking for it to be legalized. The last time I was seriously interested, the only person I could come to mind was Luke Flanagan.
All right, you haven't been looking in a while.
Yeah, so I'm generally not up to date at all.
Yeah. We've had some ministers come out and express support for drug policy reform in Ireland. I suppose Ardán was probably one of the most the most advanced anyway, in certain respects. He was just for decriminalisation, actually, so maybe he was still a bit behind. But then after Ardán and the decriminalisation of all drugs, that failed and never really was achieved, obviously. But we have Gino Kenny then as well. He's with the People Before Profit, and he's actually putting forward a bill this September or October to seek for cannabis legalisation in Ireland for adults. So certainly kind of promising times ahead, but even Gino Kenny himself, he's not very optimistic at all for his bill. At least anytime I've seen him talk about it and stuff, it's just kind of like, at least it'll get the conversation going, it's kind of, I think he feels like it's not going, and I can see why. We have Fine Gael and the Green Party currently dominate the government in Ireland. They have the power. So if they don't want this bill to go through, it's not going through, just with those guys. And currently they have no kind of, there's no direction that there's no hope that they're going to see cannabis be legalized. Those three parties I mentioned, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party, in the government formation talks, we had an election here at the pandemic back in February, just as the pandemic was kind of kicking off, starting out. And they struggled to get a government together for about 2 or 3 months. So we had no government here in Ireland throughout the start of the pandemic. It was a bloody shambles. And they managed to get it together. The three guys, the three parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Green Party, they agreed to support one another in government. So they now have the power. But as part of the government formation talks, the Green Party actually had a pretty decent proposal for cannabis to be legalized and regulated in Ireland, similar to a Amsterdam coffee shop model is kind of how they worded it, which would have been great. These guys are actually in power now in government, but in the government formation talks, that was actually taken off the table. And the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael specifically said it. We are not going to legalize cannabis in Ireland. And the Green Party were like, wow, yeah, sure, we don't care. We just wanted votes from it. And they completely flip-flopped in the voters then who supported them on that issue. And I know a lot of people supported them for that issue and that issue alone. So it's that's politics here, though, isn't it, really?
Yep. Yeah, I think beyond politics as well, they'll always, as we learned from COVID, they take the advice of experts. To my knowledge, I haven't really heard any medical people or respected in the medical profession come out in support of legalization. And again, maybe it's just the propaganda machine, but the argument was always made around mental health and schizophrenia and such things.
Exactly. You have to think about it again. If you're a doctor, if you're a person working there in these services, you have a career to look out for. Why are you going to stick your head above the parapet for these stoners? You're going to look after your own. You're not going to challenge the narrative. That's not what these people are there for. You would think if anyone was going to do it, it would be the judges. Sure, the judges are sitting there in that seat in the court and they're seeing the 18, 19, 20-year-olds come into them for the last 30, 40 years. Some of these judges will be in their posts. And when did they ever say, like, when's this going to stop? When am I going to have to stop, like, giving these young fellas slaps on the wrist because they were smoking a bit of cannabis, The judges really, I'm just kind of wondering how these people really sleep at night, all these people in power. We have a Minister for Health here, like Stephen Donnelly, when he was an independent TD before he sold to the Devils and joined, was a Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. He's one of those, they're all the same. But he actually expressed in a hot press interview that he supports the legalization of cannabis. And I think he went as far as saying, sure, why should it be any business of the government's if a person grows some cannabis for their own use in their home, they're harming nobody. And that was in 2017. He said that, and then, as I say, afterwards he sold to the devil. He joined the Fine Gael party, I believe. He's now the Minister for Health. He's overseeing Alicia Maher, who's a patient here in Cork, who had to leave her home and go to Alicante because the medical cannabis access here is so paltry. She is now a medical cannabis refugee over in Alicante, over in Spain. It's a joke. It's so backwards. They're destroying people's lives with this, and they're not engaging with us either. That's why I'm out there planting plants and putting myself on the line, because the government they're fucking acting incredibly irresponsible now at the moment. In 2016, Gino Kenny put before them a bill to see cannabis legalized for medical purposes in Ireland. They supported it at the first stage. Then at the second stage, they killed it on a money matter. They stalled it. Again, playing politics. So for 5 years, they've had on the table an opportunity to end the suffering of so many patients here in Ireland. But in order to protect their precious prohibition, and and I see our government, as kind of Schmiegel with his ring, it's our precious, and they have to protect it. And they don't give a shit about these young patients such as Ava Barry, who's 11 years of age now, and she used to suffer hundreds of seizures every month, and she's suffering from very little now since she got access to medical cannabis. The government want her mother to just shut up and stop talking about the benefits of medical cannabis because of Vera, Ava's mother. So many more people are looking for their kids, for their husband, mother, whatever it might be, for all various issues. So there's a lot of people seeking access to this, and they're going to the black market to get it now as a result of the government's inaction for the last 5 years. So there's a lot of blood in their hands. Like there's a lot of organized crime gangs out there who are very thankful for this inaction. And these, as I say, like this government, man, they're a bunch of schmiegels with their precious fucking prohibition.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head around corruption, and I think people in general tend to think that it's almost impossible for maybe not so much a politician, but for anybody involved in the sciences or medicine. It's almost a religious act of faith at this stage where, well, God, a scientist couldn't couldn't be bribed or couldn't put their own self-interest above the interest of other people. I thought that kind of thinking had gone out of Ireland. I thought there would have been enough fucking scandals left, right and centre for people to realise, okay, well, the priest isn't a saint, the banker isn't a saint, the politician or your doctor aren't fucking saints. They're human beings and they're prone to all the same what's the fucking word I'm looking for? All the same temptations as every other human being. And that's all they are, is fucking people. That's it. Just a person who happens to have a specialised knowledge in a particular area and has their own self-interest at fucking heart. And I think what people fail to realise as well, everybody I think thinks that, I'm a good person, so therefore everybody else on the planet is a good person too. And they just can't fathom that there are people, now I don't know them personally, but I'm going to put in a bit of fucking hyperbole anyway, that we have a bunch of sociopaths and psychopaths at the top echelons of society, and they just don't care because they just can't care. It's just about self-interest, and that's fucking it. And if it means that a couple of people die, they don't care. These are the same people who throughout history would have sent people's sons off to die in wars at the stroke of a pen. Like, they can't fucking care. And for me, I suppose the baffling thing is, how do you do it? And I admire you, Martin, for what you're doing, because you are putting yourself at risk and your own liberty at risk. And it makes me feel a bit ashamed, because I'm essentially doing fuck all about it. And it's encouraging and it's inspiring, because generally you don't hear about these kind of things. Granted, you appeared in the newspaper, but I imagine that's a rare occurrence. And your general, if you didn't appear in it, well then, you could just be, okay, well, it's a 12-month sentence, and then it's like, oh well, I don't know what the support network around you is like.
Yeah, I would say that I wish it was my first appearance in a newspaper, but it's not. I've been in it a couple of times in the past. I've actually ran for government in Ireland. I ran in the by-election in 2019. And I actually topped the independents that year. I only got 291 first preference votes, but look, it was my first out, and I had a 2-week campaign to get that support.
Impressive.
And I done better than some candidates, again, independents, who would have had previous outings. So there was certainly support there for myself and my message in the very short campaign I had. And should another election be called here in Ireland, you'll certainly be seeing my name in the Cork North Central ballot paper again, because the people need to be represented again. While this is something that'll be very close to my heart, my community is also very close to my heart. So I could certainly get on board and supporting other issues out there as well, in terms of workers' rights, better fucking conditions in our hospitals and all of this.
I think as well, I haven't really been involved in politics that much. I've never ran for any office. But I think if I kind of take the passion out of it, I think at some stage, if you're doing that, maybe we look at Stephen Donnelly. Maybe he went into it. I'll be fair to him. Maybe he went into it with the best intentions in the world, and then at some stage you realise, listen, man, I'm knocking at these doors. These people really don't give a fuck. They haven't got a clue what the hell's going on. I'm going out with this message of, this is what needs to be done. They don't care. They're not voting for me. So here's what I'll do. I'll just tell them whatever the fuck they want to hear. And once they do that, well, then I can get into office, and then I could implement what I need to do. Or maybe beyond that, you actually get into office and you realise, well, do you know what? There's fuck all I can actually do, because there's another layer behind this facade of permanent government and civil servants, where you've no real power. And I know that's a pretty disempowering fucking message for people. But I just wondered if the kind of single issue approach to getting elected can ever work, and if it's that big an issue for people that they're going to go, do you know what? Yeah, I have to support this guy because this is the big issue. But I think maybe the way around that is like you're framing it. It's more than just, okay, I want to smoke some weed to feel good. There's real fucking harm that's done by it not being legalized,
Yeah, well, my campaign wasn't a single issue campaign at all. It started as a single issue campaign, but once I got out into the community, I started learning about a lot of other issues that were out there afflicting people. And again, a lot of false promises, as you said there a few minutes ago, given to them by past politicians. A lot of them, when I knocked at their door, they thought I was canvassing for another candidate. They were like, they couldn't believe. They were like, you don't look like the rest of them. You're like, you're young, you're not in a suit. It's just like, I can relate to you. I got to meet some really great people and find out about, their own experiences too. And a lot of them actually, they would have been able to relate with my experiences when I shared with them why it is I'm doing it. Because a lot of them, rather than me asking them questions at the door, they were asking me questions about me. And that was great. Like I really enjoyed that because I was just honest, transparent with people. And once you tell them, why you're here, why you're running, and what motivated me to do it, they're like, Jesus, well done. And yeah, my son, he got caught with hash before as well. And every time he used to be going to the soccer training, the guards used to be stopping him to search his gear bag. It was terrible, and that's the kind of the stories I would get from people. And it was just really nice to be able to relate to people like that.
Yeah, it's honesty can be very disarming for people. It's like, okay, well, fuck. what do I do now? Like, there's no real comeback here. There's nothing to argue against. The other argument that's always made against prohibition or any sort of drug is the gateway effect. So my logic was, well, the gateway drug for me is the drug dealer. So if he has one, he probably has the other. And so trying to think back when I was a kid, there wasn't really much cocaine around. It was more weed, LSD, speed, ecstasy then during the kind of the rave scene, and heroin. And generally the guy who was selling the hash had access to everything else. So beyond the weed, you spoke about Airwood as well, and kind of trip reports. Have you tried other drugs? I don't want you to fucking hang yourself now. I'm trying to move into psychedelics. Like, so have you gone beyond weed with psychedelics or anything like that?
I've experienced other drugs, other psychedelics, but alcohol for me, I suppose, I'd have to say was definitely a gateway drug. and I have to say it, I'll always say it, because I was drunk one evening down at a pub with my buddies, and my buddy pulled out a bag of coke and he's like, "Do you want to go halves on this?" And I was just fucking pissed, and I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, sure, why not?" And we started down some coke that night then with the pints, and it was great and everything. Woke up the next morning, completely regretted it, never went back there again. But for me, I think, if there's any drug that's actually a drug with the potential to be a gateway, it's alcohol, because it lowers your decision making abilities, and you make some of the wrong, worst decisions of your life, as many people out there will probably and, you got all of your own reasons you're thinking of right now. I know I have mine anyway. I bloody don't go near drink anymore. If I do, it's a glass of red wine with my smoke, and that glass will last for about 2 hours as I sip in it.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the danger there is if given the fuckers were given a chance, they'd probably put an end to alcohol as well.
Well, they're trying. Yeah,
they're trying their hardest at the moment. Like, they're making it very difficult.
It's never going to work.
I know.
No, there'll never be an alcohol prohibition again. They'll try to put. I was listening to the radio there now this morning, and they were talking about in Ireland, is 4% of all cancers are associated with alcohol. And they were talking about on the radio how we can reduce the harms of alcohol.
Oh, God.
Well, we can increase the price.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you price the poor people out of it. Is it you make them actually just buy the worst of it? We just had an increase in the minimum unit price in here in Ireland already in alcohol. And all that's going to do, it's just going to fuel the fucking underworld, because you've now got people homeless, living on the streets, who don't have a whole lot of money. And not too long ago, actually, only about this time last year in Cork, there was a pochine kind of, I don't know what they call it, a Polish vodka. There was guys just brewing their own whiskey or vodka, in their apartment on the Lower Road in Glanmire. And they got raided anyway. But what these guys were actually doing, they were giving it to the homeless community, and how they were giving it to them is, the guys would hand over their social welfare cards, their means of getting paid.
Jesus.
And then the guy would continue to supply them. They'd have a tab with the card, because he knew how much these people were getting paid at the end of the week. And then he would meet them down at the post office, give them their card, they go in, they get paid, they come back out, they pay your man, and a lot of them will just hand them back the card and say, "Yeah, we go and get some drink now." Because again, when we talk about this, like it's the most vulnerable in our society. get affected by these policies. This isn't a prohibition now, this is a policy. So you got some genius out there in government getting paid fucking, I don't know, 60, 70 or 100,000 euro a year. And their bright idea of reducing the harms of drugs is increase the pricing.
Well, it is technically prohibition. It's just not blatant.
Yeah, it's prohibition for the poor people because, look, poor people are uneducated and we can't trust them with drugs because, you know, that isn't that a bit discriminatory in itself? Like,
yeah,
they say it without saying it.
It's paternalistic. It's always been the same with our government. They look at people like they're fucking children, and I found it laughable. You know, with the minimum pricing and putting in the saloon doors in the alcohol section in supermarkets. That's going to make a huge fucking difference. Like I don't drink. Like I can't remember the last time I actually noticed the drink aisle in the supermarket until they put this fucking the saloon doors there. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, oh, that looks fun. And then my kids are like, oh, what's that, Daddy? You know, they want to go in, like, because it's hidden. Like, it's like, oh god, look, that's the Garden of Eden over there. Let me have a fucking wander in, see what this stuff is. Oh, jeez. Yeah, so it's fucking.
Other than that, it just makes it harder to queue in Lidl because the doors are right beside the fucking register.
Oh yeah, they lead to that must be a deliberate thing. That's the same here. Like, it goes straight to the fucking the checkout till as well, because express till. So they put the alcohol section right beside the express till. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, so I don't know. Surely the people who go into government, that they can't all be of the same mindset from the get go. There's got to be some process that they go through when you get in there and you realize how the wheels actually turn. Or I don't know, maybe it's like fucking Bill Hicks said in his comedy routine, you know, that you're brought into a dark room and you're shown the secret recording of JFK getting fucking shot. Yeah, there's something amiss. Like, there's something amiss where as a grown fucking human being that you're not allowed be responsible for your own well-being. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm fucking insane or something. I don't know. Maybe the weed got the better of me over the years and that I'm defective. But I don't think so. And I don't understand really why people just can't let people get on with just get on with their fucking lives. Like, there is no real harm. Granted, okay, somebody might go a bit fucking squirrely. You might get a little bit paranoid. You may sit at home for a while. You know, you may not get into the workforce. Let's face it, there's not really going to be much of a fucking workforce in the future anyway. Other than kids being TikTok stars or, you know, answering the phone for fucking eBay or what have you. So I don't know. Like I said, Martin, I admire you. I admire your courage, your lack of apathy, and cynicism, which seems to have fucking encompassed my being over the years.
Yes, you're refreshing.
Yeah. So so maybe some of that can rub off on us. So what is it that keeps you going? Is it just, like you said, there's that point where it's go, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm just not going to take it. Is it self-respect and, you know?
I have two daughters, so for me, I want to leave this world a better place than what I found it, and I'd like to, that this is my lived experience, as I say, and that this is, from my perspective, something I can do to help change the world and improve it in some ways. My oldest daughter is 14 now, and I would hope by the time she reaches 18, that if she chooses to consume cannabis, that she would be able to get it from a legal and regulated place. Hell, I even hope that maybe by the time she's 16 and if she decides she wants to use cannabis behind my back, that there's a fucking store she can go down and queue up outside of and get maybe her older cousin or something like that to go in for her, like I did around alcohol. Because again, my own lived experience, when I went and got cannabis, I was exposed to some dodgy characters. And I've a daughter. I do not want to be exposing my daughter to dodgy characters if she wants to experiment with her consciousness. Again, it's just completely human behavior. Seeking altered states of consciousness, is it not? Have we not done this for millennia?
Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old at the moment who are addicted to spinning around in a circle. Because it's an altered state and they fucking love it. They're actually addicted to it. I'm sure I'll get a knock on the door any day now to be informed that it's been outlawed. And, you know, I'll be taken away by a detective inspector. I've a 12-year-old daughter, so my plan is to keep her in the house until she's 30 years of age, and then I'll let her out and she can make some decisions for herself. But yeah, you're right, man. The kids are going to do it. They're going to fucking do it. It's human nature to explore, to rebel. So maybe your daughter will rebel altogether, and she will just be as straight as a die, and not following daddy's footsteps. So that's generally how I see things go. Like, you know, my parents were pretty straight, and I went the complete opposite fucking direction. So yeah, maybe your daughter will steer away from it altogether, you know, which I think is the ideal situation. And I have this feeling that if it is readily available and there's no taboo around it, well then people probably wouldn't have as much interest in it, especially younger people, because if there's no taboo around it, well, generally it's not really that interesting, you know.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting things about cannabis, you know, especially for the guys that I hung around with. Again, as I say, these people wanted to aspire to be kind of gangster likes, you know, so drug use was just a part of that behavior. So we take that rebellious part of it out of there, and it's like, well, cannabis, sure, what's cool about that? Sure, my granny uses that for her bad knee, you know, and my uncle uses for, you know, because he just enjoys it. It's not cool anymore, you know. That doesn't have that allure to it for the young people, the younger generation who are looking to be rebellious. And again, a lot of those people are the vulnerable ones in our society, and we have to protect them. Is that not what the whole COVID thing has been about as well? Like that was really bugging me when I hear politicians talking about the most vulnerable in our society, and we need to do all we can to protect them from this COVID. And I'm like, fucking hell, what about all these vulnerable people who die from fucking preventable overdoses from contaminated drugs? You know, I'm just like,
it's just rhetoric, man. That's all it fucking is. They don't care. They couldn't care. It's just messaging and PR companies. And,
PR, there you go.
Yeah,
Paper by us.
Yeah, that's all it fucking is. Like, so, and not to be too cynical, but they can't care because it's impossible to care for large amounts of people. It's difficult enough to care for your own fucking family. But to care in any real meaningful way,
I think Gandhi expressed it in that the weak cannot love, for it is the prerogative of the brave. I think that's a quote there from Gandhi. Joe, just basically kind of saying that a lot of these people, that it would be a brave thing for them to do, to step up and again challenge the narrative and do the right thing. But a lot of them, they're not brave people at all. So they're not capable of love. They can fake it, but they can't be truthful for that. And again, as I say, on the doorstep, people were certainly receptive to that.
When did you say you're gonna run for? Was it local government or was it a general election?
It was a general election. I wouldn't be really running for the local government because this is a national issue that I'd like to deal with, and if I get stuck in local government, then you just
has no power.
Yeah, that's it. Like if it came up, maybe I would do it. Just again, I might run for the locals, but not in looking to actually get elected, but just to bring attention to these issues on a local scale, because there is certainly, I suppose, power there from local councillors to be able to engage with the communities. And there's a lot of communities around the north side of Cork City that have been incredibly affected by this silly war on drugs that we've waged in our streets.
I imagine you're talking about basically working class areas. I assume I make that assumption. If there's kind of a lot of crime, and this is a very unpopular thing. I would have come from that background as well. There's most of the kids basically there's no guy in the home. He's just not there, and I'm not going to go down the route of going, oh well, it's single mother's fault. But there seems to be a lack of responsibility on the part of guys to take responsibility. So essentially we have, at least from my viewpoint, a fucking couple of generations of kids who have grown up with no real male role model in their life. So they've essentially been fucking feral. And so I don't know, is that the same for the areas you're talking about there, where there's a lack of male role models in the household? Do you find that, or is it not a thing there?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of absentee parenting going on there, I suppose, really, whether it be one parent or both parents. And again, even when some of them had have both parents there, those parents would have been maybe afflicted with their own drug addiction problems or alcoholism. I love how we differentiate between drug addiction and alcoholism. This is so silly, like, but that's the stigma that's there. A lovely, beautiful word for alcoholics and oh, you're a drug addict. Oh,
yeah,
shame on you. But yeah, certainly that there was issues like that, absent parents, the kids just finding role models in the wrong people. It takes a community to raise kids, and when you're coming up in some of these areas, the community that the kids get brought up in is probably not the most beneficial for some of those kids, because the people they look up to, they're going to lead them down the wrong path. And I seen that happen firsthand to people, you know. Many of them out there still doing the same thing they were doing bloody 15 years ago, like not progressed much in life at all, in and out of the prison system, a burden on the taxpayers. Missed opportunity for us as a community to look out for these people, because some of them are incredibly gifted, talented, creative, but they don't see it in themselves because they've been painted and tarred as criminals instead, and druggies and all of these other things.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I know, like, community isn't what it used to be in this country. But again, if it's a case of prohibition, it's going to be next to impossible for people in the community to get involved, because they're essentially coming up against drug dealers who more than likely have weapons and probably wouldn't have much hesitancy in, you know, beating the shit out of somebody, or, you know, worse, you know, fucking, like you said earlier, getting shot in the kneecaps. And I'm always hesitant about state intervention. To me, it's a double-edged sword, especially when we talk about things like if there's issues in the house, or if there's absentee parents, well, who do they send in? Like, is it a social worker, or does it essentially boil down to individuals just coming to that realization that, look, well, you know, I know it's not very of the now, but you do have a responsibility to your community. You just do, and that needs to be spoken about honestly. And it's something that I've forgotten numerous times in my life, because the message was always, well, it's about individuality. That's the important thing. And there's a danger in, obviously, you know, I don't want to go into fucking communism like to that extreme, but we do have a responsibility to our community, and we do have a responsibility to ourselves. But again, it's not very popular. It's almost the conservative ideal, and that's not really talked about these days, or it's hushed down. It's like, oh, well, that's fucking, what are you talking about? Like, you know, community and responsibility and, you know, old fashioned values. But I think we've missed the trick in that regard. And I think when I think of what it is to talk about liberty and to be a true libertarian, well, that's what it's about as well. It's about freedom, but it's about personal responsibility as well. So maybe ultimately that's what it boils down to, is just every individual doing what they can. And if we do that to a good enough degree, well, then we probably wouldn't have as much of a need for governments and state agencies. And it seems the more power we give them, the more they look for, and then it's just such a fucking struggle to get it back again. But when you think of it, in all honesty, it's insane, like, to want to smoke something that has a mild enough effect on the person, but ultimately you can lose your liberty, your family, your career for something as simple as that. But yet people put their faith in the same people and the same system that would do that to a person. It just fucking baffles me. And I don't think people think. I think maybe that's why there's a prohibition against marijuana as well, because whether rightly or wrongly, when you smoke it, you can guarantee one thing: you're going to fucking think. You might giggle for the first couple of minutes, you might relax, but at some time, all those things in your subconscious mind are going to bubble up to the fore, and you're going to have a 3 or 4 hour conversation with yourself.
And for those of us out there who've failed to have a proper conversation with ourselves, should we not be afforded that opportunity? Again, it's not for everybody. I'm not saying that everybody should smoke up, but I definitely think that there's a lot of people out there that would benefit from engaging in that internal dialogue with themselves, because you might learn a thing or two if you take a few seconds to listen to your own thoughts. I've definitely been, again, as I say, have experienced benefits with cannabis. It hasn't been detrimental at all to me. But I'm not saying that it's not going to be detrimental to other people. Certainly, there's people out there who are prone to probably think a bit too much, maybe.
Yeah, that's I found an obsession with it. But again, there's more to it. I think there's lots of reasons, and I don't want to turn this into a fucking a counseling session for myself. But I know myself best, and so that's what I'll talk from. So, again, coming from a working class perspective, and so there's not much going on in your life if you're not in employment at the time, which will be a pretty much regular experience for guys in that situation. You're going to find comfort in the weed. You're going to find it's a culture that you can attach yourself to, and there's comfort. I think there's comfort in that as well for people that, okay, well, here's a group I can belong to. Here's a culture you can aspire to, and it gives people a goal and a purpose as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, like I said, jobs in the future, I don't know where it's going. There seems to be automation everywhere we look. I really don't think that if it is legalized, there would be, a lot of tax money to be made from it. If there is, I don't think it will be channeled into the right direction anyway. But beyond that, I think, given the harm that prohibition causes, I have lost maybe 5 or 6 friends, either suicide, a couple of them were murdered because of drug related issues. If prohibition wasn't there, they wouldn't have died, or at least they wouldn't have died that way. And it just causes fucking mayhem. Whatever, like, let's say even 1 in 10 people become schizophrenic, 5 in 10 become schizophrenic. I don't care. The harm that's caused by keeping it illegal, putting it in the hands of let's call them violent criminals. It's just disgusting. It can't be fucking justified unless there's a deep rooted hatred of the communities that it affects, and I think that's what underlies all of it. It's almost a dehumanization, and I see it with the guards. I just know they're not looking at people as people. They're looking at them as the filth or the scum or the knackers, whatever pejorative you want to put on it. And there may be good reason for that, because when the guards do generally interact with people in those communities, they're not wanted. So it's a vicious circle. I think at least if we can get the prohibition angle sorted, it's one less avenue of friction between essentially people, because that's all they fucking are. It's just, one group is armed and has the power of the state behind it, and the other group has a couple of sticks and maybe a bottle, and no real power, either politically, financially, intellectually, to combat it. So if we can get that would be a step in the right direction. Of course, the criminal element is going to move on to something else. What that might be, I don't fucking know, because it's almost impossible for anybody to commit an armed robbery these days, or I don't know what other level of crime is out there. Maybe it's cybercrime. I'm sure. Maybe we can get that meme out there, learn to code, when we do get past prohibition. All the violent criminals can do a FOSS course. That's showing my age now. I don't even think FOSS is an entity anymore, is it? But they could learn to code.
Corrupt.
But it just can't be argued that there's no fucking benefit to it other than to preserve the status quo, and to maybe at this stage to give the cops something to do, because from what I can fucking see, because everything's essentially shut down, there's fuck all crime anyway going on. So we have what cops will do now, arresting people for going into restaurants, or I don't fucking know. I just can't fathom it. It needs to end. It just needs to fucking end now. And that's why we, in our own small way, are getting back into it, because I think that's what it takes. And we have this fucking beautiful technology that allows us to communicate with each other and be aware that there are people out there and to support people in any small way possible. And I think that lets people know, oh, well, you know what, there's actually more going on out there than you would actually think. So yeah, this is what we'll do in our own small way. And I might start planting a few plants myself. I used to just plant them around the community. Didn't have the balls to go up near the guard station. It's I get that chill of like, oh, I want to stay away from these fuckers as much as possible. But yeah, I think it takes stuff like that, and it's it takes balls to do that. So
yeah, well, when you're doing it for the right reasons, like that, there's nothing to fear. You're going to be on the right side of history if your beliefs are correct, and I believe my beliefs are definitely in the right place here. So I've no fear in being 100% fully committed to this cause. I certainly see it as being needed. If I'm not committed, then sure, might as well just go home, like go ahead and do something else. Because if you're not going to do it right, then why bother doing it at all? I've been, as I say, like I'm 32 now in September, and I've been at this since I'm 17. It's fucking too long now. Like I'm really looking forward to the day that this change is brought about, and I can just go back to focusing on my own kids, my own career. I've an honours degree in herbal science. I'm currently doing a master's at the moment in bioanalytical chemistry as well in UCC. So I'm skilling myself up. I'm engaging academically because it's my only real option here at the moment, as the job prospects for a convicted criminal, multiple convictions for drug possession. I've none for dealing, actually, thank God, and I hope I don't ever do. But yeah, I've only ever got caught with personal amounts of cannabis. But for me, I just don't see myself as being able to get a job from any of the companies that would be that would be worth my time.
Yeah, I think those kind of convictions for possession, I don't think they're a negative. I think that actually adds to your fucking your character, So yeah, you speak beautifully. You're doing your master's degree, so there's your fucking ethos sorted. So it's very hard for people to argue with. You can have an educated person, but if you have the paper, well then your respect will only grow. So you're probably arming yourself where people can't have an argument.
Yeah, that's why I went down with the herbal science, because it was just such a diverse course. It was herbal science or chemical engineering were the two choices. Chemical engineering had a pretty much guaranteed job at the end of it, because chemical engineers, they were in high demand. Herbal science was down to the individual as to what you do with that at the end of it. I knew it was just much more closer to my heart, the diversity of what was offered through the modules that I done in that course. It was great. Got to do pharmacology, got to do like different kind of botany classes, different herbal product preparations, and loads of other stuff there, like and to do with regulatory affairs as well. But the one thing I learned is that cannabis, it should not be illegal. It's incredibly beneficial. It does not fit the Schedule 1 definition that it has little to no medical uses. And I don't understand why there's such stigma there that the herbalists in Ireland are not fighting for this as a tool in their tool bag to be working with their patients. Any herbalist I talked to throughout my 4 years in the herbal science course, and we got to talk to a couple of practicing herbalists here in Ireland, they always said to me, Asha, what do I want cannabis for? There's much better plants out there. And I'm just like, whoa, like that was their way of just kind of dodging a bullet. They didn't want to engage in the topic, because I asked them a pretty freaking good question. It was like, oh, there's a lot of emerging studies there around cannabis use as a medicine. I was like, as a herbalist, do you not want to be involved or have that in your tool bag as a medicine you can use with your patients? And that was their answer. Oh, there's much better plants out there. I'm like, that's not an answer. Like, come on, I didn't understand it at all, and I still don't understand why the herbalists aren't involved in this. And you look at was it Jazz Pharmaceuticals? They bought GW Pharmas. They were bought by a big company. I think they were bought by GW or something, or vice versa, for like a couple of billion. Like that's how much money is out there for cannabis as a medicine, and we've the herbalists kind of saying there's better plants out there. What other plant is out there being, making companies worth billions? Like there's none. I don't know what they're, and I think it's just fear and stigma. I think imagine that a lot of these people would have grown up in that older in age, and they would have been in their 50s, I suppose, that kind of age, talking to them. So. But still, they would have fucking come through the 60s, man. I mean, you're like, come on, surely there's like some residual effects that coming through the 60s.
Okay. And so, so let's move into the future. And so we have legalization. Do yourself branching out into a business within the cannabis industry? Is that something you would like to pursue?
I suppose for myself, I would hope I'd be able to go on and do a PhD. I would love to do some more, just add to the body of knowledge around this plant and work with it in that sense, and then maybe go on from there and work with it maybe clinically. I would love to be able to be maybe a leading expert here in Ireland in medical cannabis. But that's down to me, I suppose, and what I do with myself over the next couple of years. Hopefully, I'm lucky enough to find a supervisor there in one of the colleges that'll be brave enough to take me on with my bold projects.
I'm sure you will. For me, it would be to grow it. Like, I was never happier than when I was growing it. I much prefer the process of growing it than actually smoking it in the end. So yeah, if it was legalized tomorrow, that's where my attention would probably fall. Would be to grow as much of it as humanly possible, and then obviously sell it. There's not much point in just growing it and keeping it there to look at,
I have a friend who done the same. He started growing his own as well, and he got incredibly addicted to growing, and not just growing cannabis. So he's got like you go over there, he's on unlimited supply of strawberries, raspberries. He's got spuds, everything. Like he was growing nothing before, and now he's like, he's just like he's living on a farm or something. He's just got every vegetable.
So it is a gateway drug then.
Yeah.
Strawberries,
raspberries. Watch out for those fucking raspberries, man. They'll put you right over the edge. Yeah, but it's very human, like, so just to grow something, there's the simple experience of taking, it's not creating something from nothing, but, just a seed and then some love and care, to watch it grow, to watch the cycle. It's actually science, real science in action, through observation. You see, how the plant emerges, and then, you learn new things, is it a male or female plant? Is it, hermaphrodite? And then, the flowering cycles. It's to me anyway, it's fascinating. And yeah, so I had to stop for various reasons. But yeah, so if it was to be legalized, that's where I would definitely throw my knowledge back into that area, and it would make a good go at it. Yeah, so we hope and pray. Right, Martin, I'm going to shift gear on you for a moment. I know you said you got two kids. You didn't mention a wife or a woman.
Wife to be, fiance.
All right, good stuff.
Well done.
You're a rare breed, man.
We've baby number 3 in the oven at the moment.
Oh wow!
Oh, nice! Congratulations.
Due in November.
All right. When do you plan to get married? You say?
We're planning June 2023, so we're giving ourselves plenty of time to prepare. Only recently engaged, proposed there on Mother's Day. She's been hounding me for years about it. It's not really something that's like in my priority book. Like I'm not really a big believer in marriage. It's like, why do we need to do this? Who is this for? It's like, I love you. I'll stay with you forever. I'll make all these commitments, but why do we need to go into like this like in house of God and all this stuff? Like I was brought up Catholic, I suppose, but I'm certainly not practicing Catholic anymore, really. Yeah. And you asked the question earlier on, and I was going to get to it actually about psychedelics and other kind of drug use. For me, dimethyltryptamine, I went and made my own at one point in time. Made about 10 grams of the stuff. It was enough for a couple of thousand hits. Like, it was crazy. Didn't intend to make so much, but I just ended up with it anyway. But long story short, this stuff just changed my way of viewing death. That was the biggest impact of psychedelics for me, of DMT, dimethyltryptamine. I suffer with insomnia at nighttime, where I would lie awake at night wondering, when I die, and when my kids, pass away as well, and we're in heaven, what if they get into heaven and I don't, or what if I get in and they don't? Like, this was always a thought in my mind, in terms of heaven and hell and afterlife and stuff like this. And then once I tried DMT, dimethyltryptamine, for whatever reason, I just got just a complete sense of closure around that question, around that issue. It was like, this is not something that you have to worry about. Don't worry here. That this is something that'll be. It's out of my control, really. But I just found a new acceptance around life and death. I was no longer fearful of death and things like that. So psychedelics for me certainly changed my way of thinking. I've not had any two other strong psychedelic experiences. I messed around with mushrooms a couple of times, small doses. But dimethyltryptamine, 15 minute, well, it was about 7 minutes. And I've never once had a night of insomnia anymore since then.
Wow.
One dose.
Yeah, that's it. Like, so, sometimes you only need one experience of a particular drug to do the job for you. So I've done psychedelics as well, and obviously psychedelics are coming into the public domain again, and I've mixed feelings about it. So I would have taken something similar, had a similar experience to you. But again, afterwards, I had no fear of death. Afterwards, I was of the mind that there is no death. There's just different forms of being. I had the experience of leaving my body, so you call it whatever you want, soul, consciousness, left the body and went elsewhere, went through the ego death experience. Anyone who's listened to me before knows the stories, that are probably fucking bored of it at this stage. But yeah, you can't come back from that experience the same. You don't have the fear of death, and or at least for a large amount of time you don't. Every now and again it comes back to me, because it's like, oh well, hang on, well, what if that experience was just actually a trick of the mind, but again, we don't know, we can't know what's to come at the end of it, and it's really pointless worrying about it anyway. But the human experience makes you fucking worry about it. But what I found really interesting during COVID was how many people obviously have never given it a moment's thought, or are just terrified of death or illness, or that people would. I would imagine if it came from government, listen, you have to wear a sleeping bag and wrap a fucking bin liner over your head and poke a hole through it with a straw, and they would do it, because ultimately everybody is terrified of dying, because it is the great unknown. And to move on to...
That's what all religions are centered around it. Like, you just kind of think about it. Catholicism, it's almost like a death cult. Young kids learning from a young age that there's an invisible man in the sky watching and judging you every moment of your life. And when you die, that's when he's going to get you.
Yeah.
And you better hope that you've been good. Like,
yeah, I think that's part of our we generally get a piss poor education. Most of us, on all levels. Like, so we get a retarded religious education. It's essentially fit for a child. There's no real. I can't remember. Maybe secondary school there was some actual talk about religion, comparative religions. I know in private schools they do it properly. Again, for my schooling, nothing about philosophy, and there's links between religion and psychedelics, and philosophy and psychedelics. It would be hard to imagine how certain ideas aren't reached without that level of experience of other worlds. And we have it in history, with shamanism, and our continuous search for altered states to see if we can figure out, well, what's actually fucking going on. What does it actually mean? What does any of it mean, you know, all the existential angst that we all fucking have. But I think the majority of people just, you know, don't want anything to do with it, which is why people bury themselves in alcohol and all sorts of stuff, or, you know, all sorts of actual distractions, because it's kind of painful, you know. And one thing I wanted to say as well, sorry to go back, I have a tendency to jump from one topic to the other. I'm sure you've noticed, is around your marriage, and that kind of view of like, oh, well, why the fuck would I want to get married? I was the same. It's like, well, it means nothing, you know. So, you know, the marriage, surely the vow should be between the two people. That's like, okay, well, listen, I'm committing myself to you and you're committing myself to me, and that's it. But that's not it, because, well, from my experience, it can fucking end.
It's a contract of the government.
Yeah, but it can end at any moment. And there is that notion that, you know, well, why get the law involved with any aspect of your life? It doesn't really fucking work out. But I did get married, and there is something to basically committing in front of other people, because if you commit, well, I found if you can commit in private, it's like, well, you know, yeah, fuck it. But there's something special about committing in public, because your peers are there looking at you, and they know, okay, well, you know, your word has to mean something, because those people are standing there, and it's a huge deal for the women as well, and to declare your love and your commitment and your promise to stay with them. Ultimately, it means fuck all, because, you know, if it's going to end, it's going to end. But there is something special to do it in public, especially.
Somebody told me that it's better for you in terms of your taxes.
Mate, yeah, it does work out. Not as much as you think, man. Not as much as you would. Not as much as you would think, but I think it's better for your kids as well, you know.
Yeah, definitely makes some things easier like that.
Yeah,
definitely.
and my kids, well, the older ones, like they talk about, oh, my dad's married, because it's becoming a rare fucking thing. The only people who are getting married, really, when you look at the actual stats, are wealthy people, kind of, you know, middle class working people. They're not really getting married, again, because the narrative that's been out there is, oh, well, it's to do with the church, and the church is poison, but it's not. It's really, when you strip away the church out of it, it is that commitment between two people, and it means something. But I found my when I got married, the 3 weeks afterwards were fantastic, and then the 4th week was like a row about some nonsense that I can't remember now, but such is human existence. So yeah, I would happily recommend people to get married. What that lets people know is that I'm not arguing with my wife at the moment, but come back in 2 weeks, I may have changed my mind. But yeah, fair play for getting married. Yeah, I think it's good for people to do it, and we need to get past the whole fucking balls up that was the Catholic Church, and remember that, you know, those kind of ceremonies and rituals were, you know, in existence before any sort of church, and they mean something. Them. Exactly. And I've been behind the curve on that, and it's difficult because there's just so much shit that's happened to people in this country, and not just this country, and we tend to look at our traditions as nonsense, but they're not. It's just the people we've entrusted with them, or the custodians of certain traditions, have fucked us over, and that's partly our own fault as well, I think, because we've handed it to them on a platter, and now's the time to maybe just go, you know what, let's take it back. Remember who we are, you know.
Take it back from the priests, the bankers, the politicians, the lot of them. Take it back. Martin, can I ask about what is a major smoke up last week?
Yeah.
Who was in attendance?
There was I think there was 1,147 or 74 people, yeah, something like that. Anyway, it was almost 1,200 people in attendance. But there's people from all walks of life, really. Like if you were up there on the day, you would have seen a very diverse crowd, people of all ages. There was families there, great mix of people. Like it was a really well attended day, in fairness, and it went off without a problem. And I always compare this actually, and I thought it was funny that if this was a major protest for alcohol legalization, and we were all up there committing civil disobedience, drinking alcohol in the Phoenix Park,
Oh, Jesus.
I guarantee it wouldn't have been left in the way it was, because we cleaned up after ourselves. There was no fighting, so there was no public order incidents. So I would imagine if there was alcohol involved, that would be a completely different story. But it was a great event. The Patients for Safe Access were there as well. I'm actually a director of that organisation with Kenny Tynan, Alicia Maher, and Martin O'Brien, and it's a really good organisation, Patients for Safe Access. It's originated over in America, and they're kind of assisting us here now in order to help the patients here in Ireland. But they were up there. Kenny Tynan's there was up there. Kenny Tynan suffered with cancer, and he got access to medical cannabis, but it was costing him nearly €4,000 every 3 months, and you just couldn't afford it. So he's back on the black market now, getting his cannabis here in Ireland.
Why was it costing him so much money? Like what
£4,000?
Because there's a monopoly on it, don't you know?
Where was he getting it from? Like, it
was coming in from Holland from a company called Bedrocan.
Okay.
So this was really high end pharmaceutical type of medication, like gamma radiated and everything, completely sterile.
Oh, lovely.
And completely unnecessary as well.
Yeah. So it's like fucking Health Canada, the way they treat it as well. Like, so it's essentially fucking. Yeah, they radiated as well. Holy fuck, man. And what kind of quantity was it that he was getting that was like...
I believe he said that he could get all he needed in a year off of 16 plants. So that was kind of what he was saying. I don't know how much he was actually getting every 3 months. But that's kind of when I was talking to him, that he would have been able to get that. And what I do know is he's getting cheaper on the black market as well. So it probably wasn't more than maybe an ounce or two a month.
Okay, that's just craziness. Like,
yeah,
absolute fucking craziness. All right.
Wow, I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, I think it works at like €25 a gram or something like that for the Bedrocan stuff. Thereabouts. Could be wrong now, but
right, yeah, that's that's extortionate. Like, not compared to the black market, but yeah, it is actually. Yeah, what's that like? Fucking 25. So yeah, 75 for basically an eighth. Like, okay, yeah, that's fucking pretty extortionate. So what was the name of that organisation again, Martin?
Patients for Safe Access. We have a couple of pages up on social media and things like that. We have a good website about as well, patientsforsafeaccess.com.
Okay. Can people donate to that if they want to? Is there a Patreon or a PayPal or anything like that?
I'm pretty sure we just got our bank account and stuff like that sorted there recently. I'm not too sure if the donation link is put up. There's somebody else managing the website end of it. But there was talks of us being able to open up the doors for donations very soon.
Okay.
Because we are planning our first symposium, I suppose, a conference. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for, a conference. So we're organising one for September, October. So we'll be doing that above in Dublin to help educate the bloody politicians. And
good luck.
I know, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We persist.
I don't know what would fucking convince them.
There is no convincing.
Yeah.
Pitchforks. That's what would convince them.
Yeah.
Let's be real here.
No, that's my belief as well. I believe it's the people who have the power here in this one, and the government's in action now. It's calling. It's we need to get the people engaged in this. You know, without the people who are engaging on this. It's never going to change. You know, you hear some of the guys talk about like 5 or 10 years it might be done, but like like if the people get up and demand it, now this is our country. Like the government work for us. Like that's how we have to remember at the end of the day. They're there for us. And when their policies are wrecking our communities, like, you know, we have to take to the streets and demand change, because guys, you're not fucking serving us right now. You're serving some other agenda, and we don't like it. So it's people power. If people got out in the street and demanded this, we could have decriminalization in a couple of months, and we could have a proper regulated market maybe within 12 months if we were so keen on getting it done.
You see, and so if we have, say, young guys in the Cork area listening, if they wanted to get involved, can they come through you? Is there particular organisations or even countrywide, nationwide? Because I'm out of the loop. Is there a central point people could go to?
Yeah, I have the podcast, I suppose, Martin's World, and I'm using that as a platform to try to give people, give myself more of a voice, but also others out there who've suffered at the hands of Prohibition for whatever reason, to give them a platform to speak out as well. So I'm always interested in hearing from other people out there who have had bad or whatever kind of experiences there because of Prohibition. I'm always interested in hearing people's stories, and if they're willing to share them publicly, then that's even better. I believe the sharing of our experiences of Prohibition, it's going to help bring about the changes as well, because once more people start talking out about it, others will feel not so alone and be like, yeah, I feel like you actually. I feel like this was unjust. I feel like I was wronged. And they might find their voice also. So that's kind of what the how important what I see what I'm doing is at the moment. I'm trying to help others find their voice as well while strengthening my own.
Good stuff, yeah. Because when we spoke to Mark Emery, something that hadn't crossed my mind. So he was talking about the actual numbers of people who are in prison for cannabis-related crimes is quite low, and so I think if we just look at it as a kind of criminal justice issue. For people, maybe it's not that big an issue. It's like, oh well, if I get stopped by the guards, I'll go to court, and like you said, you'll get a strikeout or I'll get €100 fine. So they will put up with that. But what I think is a stronger point is the actual effect on communities that it does have. And granted, if you're not part of that community, you might go, well, so fucking what? Like, it doesn't affect me. But what outgrows from that is a level of criminality, and generally for criminals, like, they don't stay within their own communities, so they're coming to middle class areas to fucking steal your shit, and there's a whole kind of system that emanates from that, and I think people need to be made aware of everything, all the angles that come from it, and if we can help in that level of education as well, we do whatever we can, and yeah, I'm glad this is back on my radar as well, because I've forgotten about so much of it just between apathy and life, but it's really good to know that there's guys like you out there, and there's a lot of different kind of stuff going on. And it gets me out of my fucking cynical mindset, and it encourages me to get back into it and do a little bit more,
Yeah, definitely. I think there was something that I would have learned in my CSP classes, the importance of stewardship in your community. And, and when if you're at home, you see something spilled over on the floor, you're not going to leave a spilled milk on the floor. You're going to clean it up, because somebody else might walk along and slip and hurt themselves. It might be your mother. Would you not feel responsible for that? That's what Prohibition is. It's like spilt milk and wet tiles, you're going to make sure you dry them off and get that milk up so no one else spills because of, the spilt milk. You mightn't have even been the one who spilt it. But that's what stewardship is. It's just doing what's right for the community, and in order to better it. So we all have to find that within ourselves too, and within limitations.
Okay. Good stuff. I wish I still smoked weed, because I probably I was saying to Howard that I haven't smoked in so long, but I can hear the calling. Yeah, but
and you're not based in Canada, no? You were just happened to be taught in the Mark Emery's, was that?
Yeah, well, yeah. I like I said, I was kind of heavily involved years ago. And at the time I would have been hanging out on the Cannabis Culture website, and I got to know a lot of people.
Because we actually brought Mark Emery in a tour of Ireland, the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, just after he got released from prison.
Yeah, wow.
Mark Emery was an incredible inspiration to me, and we were up in the Twisted Pepper above in Dublin.
All right.
And Mark Emery was just all about civil disobedience. He was like, you want the government to listen to you. He was like, you go out there and you engage in civil disobedience. You tell them you're not going to respect their laws because their laws don't respect you. And that was inspirational to me. He was at the Twisted Pepper and he lit up a joint on the stage. He was up there on stage with Joe Glow, again, the Dean of Decriminalisation. So it was an incredible tour that we organised. He went from Dublin to Galway to Cork. They gave talks in Trinity College, NUIG, UCC. It was incredible. It was an amazing a few days.
Yeah, he was saying he had a great time, and he was saying he wants to come back as well. So if it can be organised, that he'd be more than happy to come back. And he was mentioned to us very simple things, as simple as basically somebody putting on a sandwich board
idea.
Yeah, just basically
great idea.
Stand in your town square, ask people, the question, why is prohibition a good idea?
Come talk to me.
Yep, and he was saying that it needs people essentially like yourself. So I know you mentioned the fact that you have the convictions, but that's a positive. So it needs people of good standing and good character, because that's what it boils down to. You two people, identical people, let's say, two people could make an identical argument. So say we have the Scanger, who's making the argument, okay, this is why prohibition should be done away with, and we have Dr. Condon making the argument. People, they're just not going to listen to the person without the degree or the master's degree. So it's a massively important. And this is not to put this on you, Martin, by the way. Like it's not your responsibility to do it. But that's what I found interesting from Mark is that it's a lot of simple things, and it's consistency and things like appearing in the newspapers and doing what you're doing by going to Garda stations and planting plants. That gets into people's consciousness, and people through that they see the ridiculousness of it. It's like, so it's about plants. Like, it's really fucking it's a pure nonsense.
And people see that, and Martin, you are opening people's eyes to it. So keep doing that.
I will indeed. Yeah, I'll be doing everything I can to bring attention to this issue, because I believe it's something that's it's a quick fix. We could sort this out rather easily and save so many lives.
just get enough people on the same page at the same time. Done. Yeah.
And I just noticed something now. So Howard told me that my voice, I sound like Leo Varadkar, and just listening to you, Martin, you sound a little bit like Micheál Martin. So maybe you should do a skit together. Yeah, maybe we could come together and we could do a couple of impressions around Leo and Micheál. Is Micheál Martin from Cork? Is he by chance?
He is. Yeah. He's only.
Oh, sorry about you.
You must be proud. Are you proud down there? Yeah.
We all love Cork people, though.
All right, well, there we go. There's not a lot you can do about that. Okay, man. So just remind us again, where can people find you? They can find your podcast. Obviously, they can Google it. Is there a particular website or YouTube? Where do you generally direct people to?
Yeah, well, I suppose my content is most active over on YouTube. So if people want to subscribe over there, it's Martin's World Podcast over on YouTube. And if they're so keen to, then as well, you'll find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well under the same name, Martin's World.
Okay.
All of those links will be in our show description.
Okay. Excellent.
And where are you registered for the wedding so people can purchase gifts for you?
Oh, yeah. we have to figure that one out. Might go to Las Vegas, maybe. We'll see if...
Yeah, get back to us on that.
Yeah, maybe take a trip over to California there as well, and tell us what the scene is like there. That would be interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. If I was going to have a wedding, I'd love to have a cannabis themed wedding. Where guests come. If they want to partake in the herb, it's there on offer from. We'll have 2 wedding cakes as well. One is edible and the other one is non-edible.
Yeah. Actually, maybe what you could do is you could both take some DMT before you actually take the pills, and then see then at that stage as well. Hang on a minute. Actually, we're all married. Everyone in the room is married. We are all one. Therefore, there is no reason to get married. How can one marry the universe? No, that might work as an argument. Okay, Martin, thank you very much. It's been great chatting.
You're
to
a gent.
Yep, and it's it's been inspirational and encouraging, because I'm a miserable cunt most of the time, and a cynical fucker. So thank you for letting me know that there's people out there actively involved, and it makes me want to do more. So thank you, man. Thanks for everything you're doing. And
no bother at all, lads. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I really enjoyed the conversation here this evening. So it's thanks very much to you.
That's the important part. Cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Could you imagine if we held you against your will for an hour and a half?
Yeah, you have to pay bail now to get out of the interview. Or it's not even an interview; it's a conversation. All right, okay, that was great. With the content, Martin, do you want a copy of this, or do you need anything on that front?
No, if you send me over, once you've posted up online, if you send me over a link and I'll just start sharing it around, and I'll direct people to wherever it is that you host this. I've no problem with that at all.
All right, grand, yeah. And I make episode art for every episode, every interviewee, so I'll send you on the raw copy of that,
Excellent.
To do with whatever you like.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Nice.
Well, it might be shite, but who knows.
I'm always interested in what people can create, because I've definitely lacking in my creativity. Anyhow, I get ridiculed over in Reddit for some of the posters I've made.
maybe Howard can give you a masterclass at some stage.
Might have to take you up in that, Howard, sometime.
So, Morgan, are we going to continue our chinwag together to have something to put out this week?
Yeah. So where are we? 11:50. Yeah, we continue for a little bit, and then we can wrap it up then.
Lovely stuff. So, lads, I'll leave you get back to it, and thanks again for having me. And if you ever want to pick up this conversation, if there's ever more questions you have in regards to drug policy reform or anything like that in Ireland, by all means, I'd be happy to come on or point you to some other great guests that you could have on to continue this kind of conversation too.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, brilliant. Maybe before this conference that you have in September, we can talk to you again.
Yeah, certainly. And I could even get some of the patients to have a chat with you as well, and maybe share their experiences. Might be worthwhile.
All right. That'd be great.
Yeah. I would love to hear that. Yeah. All right. You have a good night, man.
You too, guys. Thanks again. Enjoy your evening.
Cheers, Martin. You too. Take care.
You're listening to the Anti-Broadcast on Eclectic Vibrations Radio. Check the description for links to full shows, our social media links, as well as links to your favorite podcatchers so that you can keep up to date.